There was a 4-year period in my life in which a gambling addiction, I lost over $140,000 and literally ruined all aspects of my life. I had so many lows during that time. I had to file bankruptcy. I had to sell a nice home I worked hard to get. I had a nice truck repossessed. I had utilities literally getting shut off. I was at a very low spot and definitely at a rock bottom. And that was honestly the hardest thing in my life that I ever had to overcome. And I've been through a lot of things, from stuff from when I was a child that I went through. Also, when I was about 12 or 13 years old, my mom lost custody of me and my siblings, some of which I didn't talk to for 5 or 10 years because as a result of that. Also, I had went to juvenile when I was 14, been shot. I got shot in my lung. My lung collapsed when I was in high school, my right lung here. And then by the time I was 18, I was headed to prison where I would spent the next almost 5 years of my life incarcerated. So some of the things I went through in life, of course, some of them were things out of my control, and then a lot of the stuff I had went through was more as a result of self-infliction or putting myself in certain situations or environments. Also, my mom battled with different type of mental health problems throughout her life, and she passed away. So I have been through a lot of things in life, and I really only state that just to show the context of which gambling was. Even though I've been through a lot, gambling, overcoming that addiction was by far the greatest thing I ever had to overcome in life. So we will get into the story of this will be a 3-part series. This first one is to be about the gambling addiction, how I got into it and how bad it got, and just all the aspects of my life that it affected. And then there's to be a 3-part series. So the second video will be about what I learned from the addiction. And then the third video will be about the most important one, in which I talk about how I was able to overcome that addiction. So make sure you watch all 3 parts. So let's get into it. Gambling. I was introduced to gambling at a very young age. The neighborhood I grew up in Houston, Texas, the apartment complex, it was pretty normal to see people, gambling and stuff like that, gambling money. So I learned what it was at a young age, maybe like late elementary school. I really didn't personally start gambling maybe till like around high school or so. I have memories, or even a lot of people that know me, like there's memories of me, or not just me, but people gambling, at the high school, in the football locker room and different stuff like that. So fast forward, I ended up getting incarcerated when I was 18. And then, like I said, I would go on to spend almost 5 years in prison, get out around the age of 22 or so. And, the first couple years after being released, I didn't gamble at all. I was honestly just focused on working, building my career up, parenting, stuff like that, taking care of my son. I don't remember the exact timeline in which I started gambling, but it was a few years. I had already been out a few years. And it was honestly after I was making a lot more money, where I had more disposable income. So eventually I would start to gamble. And just like for most people with addiction, it kind of honestly just started off as something just to do, more of a action gambler. So you're just doing it just to action, or just to, the thrill of it all. And that's what a lot of people, honestly, not just with gambling, but different other stuff, they just do it just for the experience. Or maybe it's people, or maybe it's the environment, or, just trying it, and then they get like the thrill of it. It's not really initially an addiction at first. That's kind of what you do initially. But what happened was, over time, you start to want more and more of that, and then it gradually just grows bigger and bigger. And then eventually it turned into a full-blown addiction, and I became more of an escape gambler. And that's honestly some of the main reasons people try to escape either it may be some type of trauma they went through from a child, or the trauma they're going through where they haven't processed it emotionally and mentally, so they can seek means to escape. And that's how, honestly, gambling, it became for me a coping mechanism. And maybe I wasn't, if I look back at maybe why I kind of did, I think a lot of it was maybe like once you start losing and stuff like that, and you realize, man, I lost all my money. And honestly, as weird as it sounds, you start to become addicted to it because it's like an escape. No one knows about it. You just become so invested in it. You're always thinking about it, like 24/7. If you're not doing it, you're thinking about doing it. You're making plans. Anytime you got an opportunity, oh, I got half a free day here before I pick my kids up, or I got half a free day here before I do this. Whatever it is, it's like you're always constantly thinking about it. And when you get caught up in that zone and you're there and you're gambling, and your brain, a lot of people, they don't realize, but the brain of a gambling addict and a person on any type of illicit drugs or anything like that, it's the same thing. It's the same patterns. If you look at the brain scans, it's literally the same dopamine system being triggered. So we seek that dopamine pleasure, and that the way it makes your brain feel inside, that's what gets a lot of people hooked. So when I look back, I think like a lot of it was I wasn't where I wanted to be in life as a man, or as a person, and with my goals and stuff like that. And you can just begin to escape, just seek out dopamine hits. I can just go gamble, and then I feel good about myself when I'm gambling, especially if you win. When you win, you feel like you're on top of the world. Or like I said, you're feeling unfulfilled and you think, oh, I'm going to hit this large jackpot, this 10, 20, 30, $50,000 jackpot, whatever it is. And you think I'm going to feel more happy about myself and have that self-worth. So that's kind of how the thinking process works a lot of times. And what can end up happening is you go gamble, and then say you lose. So once you lose, you feel bad about losing because you feel like, wow, my mental is so weak. I lost all my money. I was supposed to stop at this amount of dollars and I went all the way to zero. So now you're lacking more self-esteem than initially. Than if you just haven't, like what's I learned when I quit gambling, like you lack more self-esteem after you go gamble than before anyways. Like you might as well just not gamble at all. But which of course that's hindsight. That's once you've overcame it, you realize that. Like, yeah, you don't lack self-love, so you think you're gonna go find it through whatever your vice is, because everyone has their addictions or their different vices. But you think you're gonna go find the self-love there, when honestly it doesn't work like that. Like honestly, you're gonna have less self-worth because now you have lost your money. Now you're not handling your priorities or responsibilities and stuff like that. So now you just feel like you're in a very dark place. And that's honestly where those 4 years, where I was most of those times. Sure, it wasn't always like that, but when you lose all your money and then you're going through these constant cycles of you're steadily doing it, and then you steadily, or even sometimes you may hit a jackpot. It's been times I've hit, I think the most I've made in one night was about $12,000. You won't believe what happened. Within a 24 period, within the next day, it might not even have been a full 24 hours, I was back down to zero. I was back down to nothing. And those moments like that, that's where you can really be in a dangerous place mentally and emotionally. A lot of people don't realize gambling addicts have some of the highest ideations of suicides, more than any other addiction. That's most of the addictions combined, gambling is at the top. And I believe that. You can look that up. That's the statistics. I may put it on the screen here. But it just lowers your self-esteem so much. And especially when you're I was someone who, before the addiction, I consider myself a smart person, an intellectual person. I consider myself a mentally strong person even. I remember the environment I was raised in. Like as a child, we always looked down on people with addictions. Oh, that's such and such. They're addicted to. Like you talk down on people. So a lot of people still do to this day. They look down on people with addictions. And so when you have that kind of mindset around addiction, and then once you find out, wow, I'm in a full blown addiction, I can't handle this thing, I can't get a grip on it, you just begin to feel really low in life, honestly. So that's a little bit of just like on the mental and emotional side of it. So let's talk about financially, because I want to talk about how it affected different areas of my life. Maybe this will help somebody going through addiction or someone who knows someone going through addiction. So that's kind of the mental and emotional side, how you feel about it. Like I said, financially, I worked very hard to get a nice house. Even like I said, I spent years in prison. I got a house within 2 or 3 years of me getting out of prison. I built my credit up. I worked hard to get a house for me and my kids, a nice over 2,000 square feet, 4 bed, 2 bath, had a nice truck, all this stuff. And I seen it all like go out the door because of my addiction. I had to sell my house, and then the money I made from selling the house, I made a little profit on the house. I literally lost all of that probably within 2 weeks. All the profits I made from selling the house. Like I said, the truck the truck had to get repossessed. It would be certain times where the utilities may get shut off for like a day or two or so, because I had to wait until I got paid again to pay the utilities. I was literally it was a point where I was literally almost homeless. I was pretty much about to maybe like have my clothes and stuff like that in the storage, be sleeping out of my car and taking showers at the gym. So get off work, go to the gym or go get my clothes and stuff from the storage, then go to the gym and take a shower. I was fortunate enough I didn't have to end up doing that. I had people I loved and cared about who were able to, I could stay with or whatever until I got back on my feet. But it was almost, I almost had to live that lifestyle for a minute. And, it's kind of crazy to think about. So now let's talk about from a family or relationship aspect. When you're in a full-blown addiction, the addiction comes first. So your relationship with your family kind of goes out the door. Your relationship, like as far as being in a relationship with somebody, you can't really, I was a horrible person to be in a relationship with. I hurt a lot of people. I betrayed a lot of people. I lied to people and family and stuff like that. Like, if you're struggling with self-love and self-worth, like, and you're not even making yourself happy, or you're demonstrating behavior that contradicts, values and morals and stuff like that, you're not going to be able to do it for anybody else. That's just the honest reality. That's why now that's really a big portion of starting this YouTube channel. Is like, I want to put out real life information, be vulnerable, put out my, flaws, put out everything I've been through in life and experience and what I learned, because, we all need self-development. We all are on that journey for life. It never stops. You don't say, okay, I'm 30 years old now, I'm 40 years old, I'm 50 years old, and now I just stopped practicing self-development. You're going to always be going through things in life. So it's honestly becomes a lifelong thing. And that's what I really want this show to be about, is being vulnerable, where we can have a human to human connection, learn lessons from people and stuff like that. So yeah, as times in a relationship, I would lie about gambling, say I wasn't gambling. Honestly, it was years that nobody even knew I had an addiction. And that's one of those things why a gambling addiction can be so, it's like they call it the hidden addiction, because if you see me, I'm functioning high, during my addiction, if you would have seen me, you think this guy, I'm just a regular person. I'm taking care of my kids, I'm working, I'm doing nothing is abnormal on the outside. I'm doing everything. It appears like I'm doing everything I should be doing. There are no physical signs of me gambling. You can't, whereas somebody maybe that's addicted to drugs, or they're addicted to alcohol or stuff like that. A lot of times you can see, a person, if they're on alcohol, you can see they have, it's going to show on their face, on their body a lot of times. Same with drugs. You see people, how they look when they're on drugs, their eyes and stuff like that. Whereas with gambling, I know people who said they gambled for 5 or 10 years. Like nobody knew about their addiction for 5 years. Like, and it's one of those things where because of that, you just want to keep it private. Like the shame that comes with it, the guilt, your ego, all that stuff that you damage when you're addicted to gambling. Like, you don't want to go share that with people. You don't want to, especially as men, as a man, we come from that, just like mental health is just now being more popular, in recent years and stuff like that. But how I grew up is kind of like you just deal with your stuff. You don't, talking about mental health and stuff like that. That's kind of still something that is very, like, I've had to work at that, expressing myself. And that's just kind of how I grew up and kind of how society is for a lot of us. We're not really expressing stuff and problems. And, nowadays it's okay to be not okay. And I really appreciate that. I appreciate all the content and the awareness there is on these topics now. But like I said, a lot of times your pride and you have so much shame, you don't want to share it with anybody. You don't want to go to people and say, hey, I have this addiction and I can't control it. And because of that, a lot of people live in the shadows with gambling. And I believe that's why it is some of the highest, self-harm ideations because of it. And even as like a parent, it would affect me as a parent too. Like, there would be times where I maybe had plans with my kid. Okay, well, this weekend we're going to do X, Y, Z. I planned on doing whatever, these things with my kids. Or I needed to get certain stuff from my kids, and I would say, okay, let me go gamble a little bit, and then, I maybe double my money up. And then after I double my money up, I'll go buy the stuff for the kids, and then still have a little money left over, a little bit more money than what I started with. And, and that's how it will play out in your mind. And is that how it went? Not most of the time, not. It maybe went like that, maybe 10 or 20, 30% of the time. But most of the times, it wouldn't go that way. You would end up losing it. And that's another thing about addiction. When you lose, you're always chasing. You're always chasing losses. You're never satisfied. It's been times I won, maybe I could go in there and win maybe 2,000 or 3,000. But if you've lost maybe 2,000 or 3,000 last month or whatever, you may be like in your head, you're going to be like, well, honestly, this ain't even no profit. That's what I lost last month. So I need to double this 3,000 to 6,000 or 7,000 or 10,000 for it to be a real profit. That's how your mind can, play those tricks on you. And as a result of that, that's how you would end up, losing everything. And then come the weekend when I have my kids, because, I was always, even during my addiction, like I was always an active father still. Like my motto is I always try to get my kids my oldest son stays with me, but my youngest two kids, I try to get them 3 days a week at least. It's normally every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So, I did never really not get my kids during that time. But it would be a lot of times where when I got my kids, like I wasn't present. Or like same like with the relationship and family and stuff like that. You may not be present. You're just when you have a gambling addiction, you're so much thinking about gambling all the time. You hardly are ever present. That's something I appreciate now. I can be present with people. I can be present with family. I can be present with my kids. Whereas before, when you're thinking about addiction, man, addiction is just always on your mind. You're just always chasing that itch. You're just always chasing that action or that, just wanting to gamble. So yeah, that's honestly how bad the addiction got, as far as like financially, the stuff I was going through, mentally, emotionally, how it affected my family and stuff like that. Like I would, you would misuse people in a sense that you may say you needed a loan or something like that, when in reality you had the money, but you just ended up gambling it. So now you do need the money for something. So, and that's the thing about when you're in addiction, like if you can not get addicted, of course, that's the best thing. But man, sometimes it's hard to right those wrongs. Like the people you hurt, and it's people you love and care about, people who want to see you succeed, people who really love you through thick and thin and unconditionally. But, you see a lot of people with addiction, they can't talk to their family maybe for years, forever. Some people, because of their addiction, the stuff they did during their active addiction, they're not able to have a relationship with their family for the most part. So sometimes things can't be undone. I'm fortunate enough that, most of the people I heard while being addicted, they were able to forgive me and work things out still. But it doesn't always work that way. So yeah, this brings this video to the end. This next video should be on the screen here. That one is the one where I talk about the most important things I learned from the addiction. So click that one. Subscribe to become a part of the vulnerable tribe. This is where we will be talking about real life concepts, real life problems, real life, just stuff in general, all type of different areas of life.